What were you doing at the time when all of this was happening?
I was a detective with Golden Police Department.
That would be 2011, I guess?
Yes.
How long were you doing that?
I started with Golden on patrol in 2003. I went to investigations in 2007. And then I left Golden in 2016 for CBI.
Did you always know you wanted to be an investigator or involved in this work?
Yeah, my degree was in criminal justice and criminology.
Why?
It's just interesting, you know, I've always cared about others and always willing to help, so it's just what I wanted to do.
So back in 2011 when this first case came up, and sort of the case that I guess started it for you, that, you know, took off and turned into this whole big thing that's gone on now for years and years. What was it like that first day meeting that particular rape victim in 2011?
So it seems like a majority of the sex assault cases come in kind of at night, after hours, for some reason. That's just the history of them, and as far as my experience is concerned. But this one was, I think we got the call at like 12, like noon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so daylight. We had all the investigators, you know, in the office, full patrol teams, so we had more resources. And then, you know, when we pull up, the Golden victim was standing outside, you know, ready to tell her story. So as far as what it was like, I mean, it was nice to be in the daylight and be able to see everything readily, what she was describing and talking to us about.
As the detective, if it had happened at any other time, would you still have been called, or was it because it was during that time frame that you were the one on it?
Yeah, I would have been, if I was the on-call detective, I would have been called, but there's only one detective on call usually at a time, and a team of 3, I mean, it could be that one's out of town or one's, you know, doing something else because they're not on call or on vacation, whatever. So because of the timing of it, you know, she got a little bit greater response as far as to immediately start, you know, hammering things out and getting the investigation going.
Well, yeah, and she got you.
Yeah.
Which was lucky. What made you decide that you had to figure this out?
Well, I didn't decide. I mean, it's just, you know, what you do. It's my job. It's, patrol's got to keep moving, you know, going back to their constant stuff. In investigations, we get a case and it sticks with you until you solve it, or it, you know, becomes irrelevant, that it's just not going to be solved, and then it can sit closed for a little bit and things can happen to bring them back to light. But a sex assault of this nature doesn't usually go into that file for, you know, a long period of time. So it wasn't that I decided, it's just what you do.
Will you kind of walk me through some of the things that happened beyond that? Because you didn't work on this alone. You ended up trying to reach out to other law enforcement agencies and other detectives to try to see if this guy had been anywhere else.
Right. So, so I was at Golden, and my husband, he left Golden and went to Westminster, and he was on patrol at nights, or at night. And when I got home, you know, it wasn't late. We didn't stay out, you know, to the wee hours that night. But I had the opportunity to meet with him and talk with him. I may have eaten dinner, I'm not sure, but, and just told him about the case, because I valued his input as a professional as well. And he just, you know, was like, you know, I swear we've had at least 1, maybe 2 cases with a similar MO. And I'm just like, whatever, it can't be, you know, it can't be that similar. And he's like, call records in the morning and just get it. I'm like, I will. So that following morning, I was able to get my hands on the police reports from Westminster. And one, you know, we decided wasn't related, but one was, you know, amazing, just so similar. And I was able to, I know about my case and know what was used or what the victim reported, and things that were, say, missing from the Westminster case or used in the Westminster case. I was able to make that connection immediately. I just knew that there couldn't have been, those were the same guy.
at the first case, did it stand out to you already just because of what she was describing and explaining? Because it's, to me, I mean, it was horrible to read.
Yeah. The first case, you mean the Golden case or the Westminster case?
Yeah, the Golden case.
Oh yeah, it was horrible. And you know, and on this case, it just so brings to light that victims of crimes, especially something so intimate, I guess, as a sexual assault, they all react differently. You know, they're telling you their story that, I mean, they don't even talk about, you know, their most recent consensual sexual encounter, much less something so heinous and violent and not consensual. They don't report all the same. So you're taking in all this information, and you know, you can see the difference in the victims and the Golden case. And when I read the Westminster case, I'm like, this victim is reporting much differently, and so it's just different to see the different victims' perspectives and how the investigators have to draw that information out to use.
Is that important to know that people respond differently? And
yeah, hugely. I mean, we can't, shut down or make, we can't just decide too prematurely that, oh, this person's not telling the truth because of this, this, and that. And we have to, completely vet the information and work all angles of it.
Had you ever heard of anything, ever worked on a case like the one she was describing to you that day?
I had not.
Thank
I mean, multiple sex assaults, but not, this is different in that this was truly a stranger attack type situation. Most of our sex assaults, your victim can direct you and where to go find the perpetrator. So you know who to go talk to, you know where to find them, you can do a bunch of workup. We had all this information about a complete stranger. So, it just adds another layer to the investigation of first figuring out how the victim came onto the perpetrator's radar, who the perpetrator is, and then what you do to locate them.
I guess when I asked, why did you decide to find this guy, I guess that's sort of in the context of course you decided to find the guy because that is your job, but when you compare the way you responded to the way that the police responded in Washington, it sort of makes you look like, oh, she's going above and beyond, when they sort of just threw what she said, as, oh, inconsistencies and da-da-da, which is exactly the opposite, I guess, of what you're supposed to be doing. And I'm not asking you to comment on them or anything, but it's interesting to read the ways that each of you responded to similar reports, because you took it and started looking for similarities in maybe other cases, and that wasn't, the case in Washington.
Right.
So from there were some points in the report, and I'd love to, ask you what sort of things you'd like for me to know, or what your experience was like. But there were some things that I screenshotted while I was reading, and when it gets to the point where you're starting to see things come together and starting to see like the work finally aligning and certain things starting to light up and things for all these different cases just seeming similar over and over again. What was it like? I mean, I know that wasn't a quick process. You guys had to work for a long time to finally start really feeling like you were zeroing in on someone.
Let's see. So, when I reached out to Westminster had already kind of made a connection to Aurora. Like reading Westminster's report, there was information about Aurora, that case. So I was able to get that report. And then, so initially it was just the three of us, and the Golden victim is much different than those two victims. So it's hard for some people to get their mind around that. We like to think that a perpetrator only attacks one type of person, but in this case that didn't apply. So I mean, really, from when he came from the last assault till his arrest was only about 6 weeks. So we did all that work in 6 weeks. But what's great is that Aurora did all of their work, and then it was not necessarily on a shelf, but packaged in a way that it was easily retrievable and like I say, you pick it back up and start working with an agency again and start, it grows legs and becomes, more to work with. Same with Westminster, even though theirs was kind of cold. I hate to use that word, but it was still done in a way, excuse me, Westminster's case was done in a way that it was packaged up nicely, that anyone could pick it up and start running with it again. So, and then Golden's, ours was so fresh, we never had the chance to package anything up. It was just, you got to talk to them and move here and move there. And so when it starts coming together, it's so quickly, like Golden's not generating reports at that point. We're, just working, running, gunning, going every direction that we can to figure something out. And then, Westminster picks it up and Lakewood comes on the scene because of something, that a criminalist had reached out to one of their criminalists. So all the communication was so key and open. We weren't afraid to contact any agency or, bring someone to the table, even, because all they can do is listen to it and be like, not related and move on. But we would have hated to miss something, by not inviting someone to the table. I was going to say party. Table.
When it's less of a party.
Sorry. Yes, not a party.
So I screenshotted a point in the article where you said that you felt like you had to be there when he got arrested. What was that like, knowing, all of that, like leading up? I would love to just hear what was going through your head and what your experience was like leading up to that point of finding that guy.
Well, I felt like the victim that I interviewed in Golden was different. They were all different, like I said, but she gave so much information. I felt like I had to have immediate first presence with him to like feel him. I know that's weird, but like if I could feel what that victim felt. I know that's so weird and strange, but and when I saw him, I felt it. I saw his eyes. I saw everything that she said, and we confirmed a mark that was on the leg. The Golden victim was the only one who was able to either see or recall or maybe just able to report that birthmark that was on his leg. None of the others saw it or remember seeing it. So I just felt like I had to confirm that for myself because there were other family members, that could have been considered, and you would think that mark wouldn't be on both legs. So I felt like I had to do that.
And then what was the experience like? What, you knocked on the door, pulled up his pant leg? Like, how did it happen?
So, it was a big thing. I mean, we had FBI, CBI, Lakewood, Aurora, Westminster, Golden. God, I hope I'm not leaving anyone out. All these involved agencies that gathered up on a Saturday morning at like 6 a.m. to do this. So we had perimeters set up everywhere, just in case, it was a big thing. And I just, we lined up and I walked up and knocked on the door. And of course you have your gun out and stuff, because you don't know what you're going to encounter with somebody who victims report are being, threatened with weapons. And he just came to the door and it was glass. So, he could see me, I could see him, and he opened it and he, walked outside, and we briefly engaged in conversation and did a pat down of him. And he had like real baggy pants on, and so, police, anyone, do pat downs and lift, pant legs up just to make sure there's no weapons. And when I did that, you could visually see the mark. I didn't say, "Oh, you're him," or anything. I was just, that's in my head, and everyone on scene knew that was our guy.
Do you remember what went through your head when you saw it?
Yes. Like, this guy's not gonna hurt anyone else. I was just so thankful that we were all gonna be able to go tell these women that this guy's never gonna hurt you again. It doesn't mean there's not weirdos out there that are like him, but this guy is not gonna hurt you again. He's not gonna hurt any other woman again. As long as we knew our cases were solid, that you wouldn't think he was going away. So it was just rewarding to be able to work so hard. And I only had to work, 6 weeks in the interim before all the paperwork starts being generated. But Aurora worked forever. Westminster worked forever. Lakewood had, a lot of resources into their situation as well. So I kind of got the cake, I only had to work hard for 6 weeks.
But was it your case, do you think, that ended up being able to tie all those other cases together? I'd hate to say like it had to happen to her, but was it that case that finally started creating the spider web to all these other agencies that had those packages just kind of waiting to go somewhere?
That question's really hard because it's hard to say, oh, you had to get raped and you had to get raped and you had to get raped for us to find this guy finally. And then it's also hard to say, if you would have done more, if you would have done more, if you would have done more, then I don't know the right answer to that. I say that each case, each victim, each scene brought more to the equation to work with, for law enforcement to work with, even though we had a perpetrator that was purposely, removing evidence, was relocating his attacks, actually thinking and planning ahead to, negate law enforcement contact or even to come on our radar. So but still, each one brought a little bit more, and it worked out, finally.
And thank God. What was it like getting to tell the victim that you got that guy?
I think, every victim's different. And I think I was more emotional than she was. And I'm one who can usually kind of push down my emotions, but she was just kind of looking at me, and I'm just like, I don't know if she just wasn't, understanding it, or, right then, and then, she understood it as it played out. But as soon as I left the jail, because I wanted to go in there with him, I went over to her. She had relocated, and I went over to her place, and I was like, hey, and she's just like, I think it's that shock thing, but also thankful, and I'm very glad that she didn't have to worry about that guy anymore.
I'm sure you've, worked on 100,000 different cases, none exactly the same, certainly none, exactly like this. But what was this in your career, for you? What did this mean to you personally, to be able to bring this person who, I guess he was convicted of 28?
Felonies?
Mm-hmm. 28 different.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Toward the end, it says, catching a guy who had hurt, 3 dozen girls.
Mm-hmm. I feel blessed. I feel like for some reason that day, I'm not even sure I was the on-call detective. So had it come in at night, I probably wouldn't have been on it till the next day, or maybe that person would have had it solved that night. I don't know. But I feel blessed that for whatever reason, I got to put my mind to it, my heart to it, my experience, to it, dedication to it.
Yeah, me too. Reading about all these different.
And not that anyone else wouldn't have, but our minds all work a different way, and we all draw off of different education and training and experience. So,
has it made you a better detective or better at what you do, having been able to bring all that to light?
Well, I think every case makes me better, whether or not it's a serial rapist or a criminal trespass to a motor vehicle or something. It's all you learn, and it all goes into your toolbox of methods that work, methods that don't work, and even though it didn't work here, let's go ahead and try it here, and just adds to the whole, the experience in law enforcement.
Did you expect that this would turn up on articles and books and Netflix documentary series. Did you expect any of that?
I suspected it would at some point. I even, I had goals to write a book, but God, when do I do that? I knew sooner or later somebody would do all that.
But it stood out to you that much that you thought you might even write something.
Yeah.
What is it about it that stood out to you that made you say, even with your limited time, you're like, I should write a book on that? What stuck out to you?
I think that as a female, and the reality that, so you have these attacks, these surprise attacks, and there's so much background information behind a majority of them. Yeah, maybe one was, it only took a few days for him to identify, locate his target and attack the target and be done with it. But say the Golden victim was stalked meticulously for, since months, like August or something, before he finally made the attack in January. So I was very intrigued by all that went into his attack prior to the crime, or the attack itself. So I just was intrigued by that serial element of, the stalking part. And even when he was interviewed, he said that it wasn't about necessarily the assault and the attack itself. He said it's the hundreds, thousands of hours that he put into stalking, fantasizing, playing all this out. And then, the assault is only, an hour to 4 hours, whatever. And so it was just, that activates my intrigue, and any information that you could put out about that to other women or men, kids, whatever, not kids, they don't even know about this kind of stuff, but, just to know what's really going on out there. That this is more like the subject of a series of books versus real life. So I don't know.
It feels like when you finally get to the point where you get to hear about the perpetrator and all of, like you say, the time that he put into it and the way he was talking afterwards, it sounds like a character that someone wrote that you're like, this is a little extreme. Like, I don't know if I buy it. That's how intense this guy was.
Yeah.
What was that like, hearing him? Were you able to hear him?
I didn't sleep that night. And these things don't usually affect me, so much. But hearing him, so he, at sentencing, he stood up and he, spoke. Some of the victims spoke, of course, with their victim impact statements. And then he also stood up and addressed some of the questions that the victims had, been able to ask during their statements. And then he gave a dissertation that forever, it was kind of like, stop already. But he ended up, within a few days, we went out and he was interviewed for 4.5 hours. He didn't want to speak with me, but one of my partners with the FBI, a male, he said that he agreed to speak with him. And he was able to just give graphic details of every single one of the Colorado cases.
We have to wrap up. I've got all my chiefs out in the hallway at 11. I just reserved the room to 10:30.
Okay. I guess my last question for you would be, what is it like kind of seeing it all play out again all these years later in this, hearing people bring it up again in this documentary series coming out, bringing it all to light again? Are you happy, glad?
I'm glad. There's, Edna and I still go around, once or twice a year. If we get a request for a law enforcement conference or something, we present a case study to other law enforcement so that they can learn. It's not anything that they don't already know. It's just encouraging the time and the patience and, the commitment to work your scenes like you're trained, even though it's like, oh gosh, we're not going to get anything from this. Dust here, swab that. Just do it, so it's nice that there is still interest in it because there's always law enforcement that's, you know, coming up new, and you know, it's just, and it's refreshers for the older ones, and I don't know, every time there's interest in it, and it's nice that this is a law enforcement case that is successful. You know, it's not bad. Look what the bad police did in the media. This is a case where, you know, you have a little bit of everybody's different investigations, and even though this one was kind of messed up and ended poorly, and in the end she was vindicated, and you know, everything's okay now. Not that it's okay, but we put it together in a successful manner.
Are you proud to be part of the team that put this guy behind bars for 300 some odd years?
Definitely, and it's huge that it really is a team. You know, Edna and I are interviewed all the time, and we present all the time, but we have so many people behind us that, you know, while we're organizing stuff, they're working their tails off day and night too, so.
That's cool. Thank you for your diligence.
Yeah.